The law of supply and demand is a theory that describes how buyers and sellers of a given resource interact with each other. It explains the relationship between the price of a given product and people's willingness to buy or sell it. Price increases usually lead to more supply and less demand, and the other way around when prices fall. Two separate laws govern this theory, the law of demand and the law of supply. These two laws combine to determine the actual market price and volume of goods on the market. Hello and welcome back to the Finance Guardian channel. For today's video, we will dive more into the law of supply and demand. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell beside it, and let's get started. The law of supply and demand is one of the most fundamental economic laws, and it underlies almost all economic principles. In practice, people's willingness to supply and demand a good determines the market equilibrium price, or the price at which the quantity of the good that people are willing to supply equals the quantity that people demand. However, numerous factors can affect both supply and demand, causing them to increase or decrease in various ways. The law of demand. According to the law of demand, if all other factors remain the same, the higher the price of a good, the fewer people are likely to demand that good. Put simply, the higher the price, the lower the market demand. As the price of a good goes up, so does the opportunity cost of purchasing that good. As a result, the amount of goods that buyers purchase at a higher price is less. Consequently, people will be hesitant to buy a product that will force them to forego the consumption of something else they value more. The curve for the law of demand is a downward slope. The law of supply. The law of supply illustrates the quantity sold at a particular price. However, unlike the law of demand, this law shows an upward slope. That is, the more the price goes up, the more quantity is supplied. Each additional unit tends to incur higher and higher opportunity costs for the seller. A higher selling price justifies the higher opportunity cost of each extra unit sold, so producers supply more at a higher price. Time is always a dimension of these charts, and both supply and demand should understand that. The quantity demanded or supplied found along the horizontal axis is always measured in units of a good over a given period. A longer or shorter time interval can affect the shape of both the supply and demand curves. Supply and demand curves. A product brought to market has a fixed supply at any given time. Hence, in this case, the supply curve is vertical, whereas the demand curve is always downward sloping due to the law of diminishing marginal utility. Sellers can only charge what the market will bear based on consumer demand at that moment in time. However, suppliers can, over a longer period, increase or decrease the amounts they supply to the market based on the price they anticipate charging. Thus, the supply curve slopes upward over time. If suppliers expect to be paid more, they will produce and bring more products to market. The demand curve slopes downward for all periods due to the law of diminishing marginal utility. It is always the first unit of a good that any buyer demands that will be put to the highest valued use. With each additional unit, the buyer will use it or plan to use it for a lower valued purpose. Shifts versus movements. Movements and shifts relating to supply and demand curves are very different phenomena in economics. A movement is a change along a curve. It indicates a change in both the price and quantity demanded from one point to another on the demand curve. Movements are indicative of a constant demand relationship. A movement along the demand curve will therefore occur when the price of good changes and the quantity demanded changes as defined by the original demand relationship. Basically, a movement occurs when a change in the quantity demanded is driven solely by a change in price and vice versa. As with the movement along the demand curve, a characteristic of the supply curve is also a constant supply relationship. In other words, a movement along the supply curve will occur when the price of good changes and the quantity supplied changes by the original supply relationship. This means that a movement occurs when a change in quantity supplied is purely related to a change in price. Shifts. A shift in a demand or supply curve occurs when the quantity demanded or supplied of a good is changed even if the price remains the same. For example, if the price of a bottle of beer was $2 from quarter 1 to quarter 2, but the quantity of beer demanded increased, then there would be a shift in demand for beer. Shifts in the demand curve indicate that the original demand relationship has changed, which means quantity demand is influenced by factors other than price. The demand relationship would change if, for example, beer suddenly became the only type of alcohol available. Conversely, if the price for a bottle of beer was $2 from quarter 1 to quarter 2, but the quantity supplied decreased, then the supply of beer would shift. As with a shift in the demand curve, a shift in the supply curve also indicates that the original supply curve has changed, meaning that the quantity supplied has been affected by something other than price. There would be a shift in the supply curve if, for example, a natural disaster led to a severe shortage of hops. Beer manufacturers would be forced to supply less beer at the same price. Equilibrium price. The equilibrium price, also known as a market clearing price, represents the price at which the buyer and the seller can sell and buy all the goods they desire. If the supply curve slopes upward and the demand curve slopes downward, it is easy to see how the two curves will intersect. With the market price at this intersecting point, suppliers will bring to market the same quantity of goods that consumers will be willing to pay for at that price. There is an equilibrium between supply and demand. The exact amount and price at which this occurs are determined by the relative shape and position of the supply and demand curves, each of which can be influenced by a number of factors. Factors affecting supply. Several factors directly impact supply and determine whether there will be a high or low supply. These include the capacity of a producer or company and the costs of producing specific products, including the cost of materials, labor, and equipment. There are also factors such as the presence of competitors in the market. Additionally, if the production of an item is determined by weather, such as a company that produces sweaters, the supply of products will be determined by the weather. Another factor affecting supply is the supply chain. Factors affecting demand. Demand is most affected by consumer preferences for different goods. It can be modified by the existence and prices of substitutes or complementary products. Consumer preferences may also be affected by changes in conditions, such as seasonal changes and advertising effects. Changing incomes can also have a profound impact on whether the quantity demanded at a given price increases or decreases. Why is the law of supply and demand important? Investors, entrepreneurs, and economists rely on the law of supply and demand to understand and predict market conditions. For example, during the launch of a new product, a company may deliberately try to increase the price of its product by increasing consumer demand through advertising. They might also try to further increase their price by intentionally reducing the number of units they sell to decrease supply. In this scenario, supply will be minimized while demand will be maximized, resulting in higher prices. What is an example of the law of supply and demand? To illustrate, let us continue with the example of the company hoping to market its new product at the highest price possible. It would also be in that company's interest to keep its production costs as low as possible to achieve the highest profit margins possible. To do so, the company might solicit bids from a large number of suppliers, asking them to compete with one another to provide the lowest price for manufacturing the new product. In that case, manufacturer supply is being increased to decrease the cost or price of manufacturing the product. Law of supply and demand in a nutshell. The law of supply and demand describes a phenomenon with which many of us are familiar from our daily lives. When all else is equal, the price of a good will increase if the supply of that good decreases, making it rarer, or if demand for the good increases, making it more valuable. On the other hand, it describes how goods will decline in price when they are more widely available, less rare, or less popular among consumers. This fundamental concept is integral to the study of economics in modern times. And that's all the time that we have today, folks. We hope you learned something from this video, and if you did, please do hit that like button. If you're new around here, welcome, and please do subscribe to our channel to remain updated about all of our future videos. We'll see you next time.